human. And his motto is better together, together better. I'm delighted to welcome Michael Keating to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, Michael.
Hi, Alec. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks very much indeed. And you were telling me just before we came on air that it's snowing there. We have speckles here, but nothing like what you're experiencing.
No, this morning, I had to go out and push some snow away from our pathway so we could get out of our door here.
So you better tell our listeners where you're based.
Yeah, I'm based in a small town called Steinau an der Straße, which is about 35 minutes northeast of Frankfurt in Germany.
Fantastic, fantastic. And we'll talk in a minute about how you managed to end up there. But as I do with all of my guests, I like to sort of take you back to your last year in school and sort of to work out, are you the academic? Did you leave early? Did you go into one of the trades? What was on your mind and where were you going?
Where was I going? That's a good question, Alec. Yeah, it was my last year of school, and I really didn't know where I was going, to be honest. It was the mid 80s. There was high unemployment in Ireland, not very many opportunities. And I suppose the one thing that had really been sort of my continuous kind of thread through my school years was sports. Yeah. And I actually played basketball. Yeah. Although I'm a small guy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I had a forming experience where I met an American student from the University of Notre Dame, a black guy, big black guy, and he coached us for a while. And it was really powerful how he created a team. And that left an impression on my mind. I want to do something in this area of team development, coaching, personnel, whatever it was. But, there wasn't really that opportunity in Ireland. And funny enough, my dad, who is an Irish American citizen, because he took the boat way back when he was 21 and lived in America 15 years and became an American citizen. Right. He said to me, why don't you try the military, the US military? And we made that happen. So I actually left school, and then 6 months after leaving school, I joined the US Air Force.
Wow, that's a big jump. So, okay, you traveled to America. What part did you head off to?
Yeah, so initial landing was actually in New York City, and I never forget that because we landed in JFK, and you land there and you're looking around and waiting for my flight to Texas, to San Antonio, Texas. And it's just a melting pot of colors and creeds and different kind of people, and coming from, let's say, not so multi-culti Ireland at that time. Yes. I'll never forget that experience. So anyway, I ended up in basic training in San Antonio, Texas in the middle of May for 6 weeks. And thereafter went to personnel school for 4 months in Biloxi, Mississippi.
How did you find Mississippi? Like Mississippi, we have all sorts of connotations about Mississippi.
Yeah.
How did you find that?
Yeah, no, very warm, because it was the middle of the summer. So really, for an Irish person, it was sweat city, as the saying goes. But I met so many fantastic people, particularly, people of color, of course, down in that area. There's a lot of Black people. And I made some great friends, of course, in technical training school, who I still have today as friends, to be honest. And it was, for me, coming from Ireland, just incredible to see a mix of every kind of culture and creed coming together and being a team, which is, of course, the dimension of diversity, in its absolute core. So I really embraced that.
But certainly, we weren't talking about diversity back then. And I think what you were talking about in teamwork, and that was, we call it personnel.
Yes, exactly. Of course, the word changed to HR at some stage, which I don't like the human resources word. I say human relations, because really it is about people. Yeah.
So, okay, US military, you'd signed up for how many years?
4 years.
Okay, 4 years. So you have a commitment there. You're carrying the US badge on you. They're not keen to have you hanging around. They send you off to places.
Exactly. So I got sent to Korea.
Korea, of all places. I'm sure we're not talking about the North, are we?
No. South Korea, of course. But it wasn't Seoul. It was about 4 hours drive from Seoul, in the deepest sort of back beyonds of Korea. Wow. But I was stationed in an Air Force base called Kunsan Air Force Base, in the town called Kunsan. But the experience of living there, fantastic. I mean, I had of course, the honor of working on the base. That was nice, but of going and really getting to know the Korean people. So I took a Korean language course. I learned Taekwondo. Yeah, became a blue belt actually. So and traveled the country as many weekends as I could to experience this country. Just
What a
very, very kind people, I have to say.
what a culture shock that is. Yes, as you said, we tend to find around the world nearly everybody's very kind and pleasant. It's only if we experience them and get out to them.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one story which I'll never forget. I was in a town called Busan, which is on the coast. I was there visiting a tourist kind of weekend away. Came into an Irish bar, or an English bar actually it was, and I heard Irish voices. So
Oh,
it was like, unbelievable. The Irish are everywhere.
yeah.
And so connected with a couple of my homeland mates. It was nice. It was nice. I hadn't seen an Irish person, I think, in probably 6 or 7 months.
Yes, and I'm sure the locals were having wondering what to make with all of these people together and the way they behave and talk and things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as I said, Korea for me was really a forming kind of year, away from home. I mean, people won't believe this, particularly maybe young people. I didn't speak to my parents or my sisters for one whole year. It was not
Wow.
possible. There was no such thing as email.
Hmm.
This is the world of letters and writing home and getting a response, 2 weeks later on information and data which already happened 2 weeks earlier. I remember also I sent a package to my parents for Christmas. I sent it maybe 4 weeks before Christmas. It got there like 6 weeks after Christmas. So this is the time of analog.
Analog and snail mail, not what we talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But the US military were to, or Air Force in particular, were to have an
Yeah,
influence on you in terms of the whole learning curve around people and personnel.
yeah. Well, if you think of it this way, the military find, of course, the absolute most important thing about making sure the mission is committed and completed, as they would call, is people. So they invest a lot about the development of people and also the leadership dimension. I would say I met the best kind of leaders in the military because they really invested money to make sure that they were absolutely trained about being leaders. Yeah. Nothing about being managers, being leaders, true leaders, and letting your people be accountable, and taking the responsibility in themselves to do what's needed to, let's say, make sure the mission is completed. So this kind of mindset, yeah, about people are the most important variable and leaders need to be leaders, that was absolutely, breathing, living every day.
And yet, when we tend to think of the sort of military, we tend to think of leadership as being somebody who barks out orders to somebody who's below them and they're just carried out. But, your
Yeah.
experience in taking it is completely different.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, there is the hierarchy, and of course, you have these different layers, but that's only, to show progression in terms of your length of service and your capabilities. This is how they actually move people up the ladder, as the saying goes. But in terms of actual leadership style, nothing to do with that. Yeah. It is all about coaching kind of leadership, if I call it like that, or facilitating leadership. Yeah. It's not hierarchical in that way because they realize they want to have people, feeling part of the actual mission and really feeling part of the organization. So this is really clear. And I learned very much things in that experience.
And this is certainly long before this was embedded into what we call the commercial world.
Absolutely. This is, the military have been doing leadership, I think, let's say forever, right? But actually looking at the trends and actually looking at external information from universities and from institutions, the military would take that data and take that experience and build it into their training programs and into their development programs for leaders. So this was happening, like I said, way before corporate ever understood this is an important part to do it. That's why you will see a lot of military people being quite successful in corporate world because they get that experience and then they bring it to the corporate world.
And they also understood the whole thing about personal alignment as well. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, so in terms of thinking, when an organization needs to fit a mission or a vision, yeah, yes, they communicate that, they let that understand which role you play in that. So everybody's actual job, if you want to call it that, is aligned to this mission. And they spend a lot of time explaining what that is and how we all need to pull together. So again, from developing people as a unit, yeah, they would actually have games, yeah, war games, yeah, to
Mm.
practice that, yeah. Or in a functional point of view, they would have mentoring going on continuously from the young people joining the organization in a function like my personnel department, to make sure they were being developed in the right functional way as well. So these things were happening like years before the corporate actually got any idea to do this.
And certainly you were talking about also the importance of trust and teams and trust and
Yes.
building that up.
Yeah. So again, if you think about the most important variables in terms of developing this idea of togetherness, yeah, trust is the basic of all of that. So ensuring good human relations between the people, yeah, is where they invested the time and effort. Yeah. This was about also bringing people together in a social way as well, yeah, to make sure there was team activities, to having fun, yeah,
Right.
laughing together, living together, and learning together. If I put those kind of three L's together, this was part of the actual sort of success recipe to make sure people felt trust within the organization.
Wow. There's a lot of organizations in the commercial world could still learn a lot from this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I'm there today.
That's why you're there. Good stuff. By the way, for people who want to find out more about you, Michael, where can
Yeah.
they do that?
Yeah, best is probably LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I have my profile there, Michael Keating. Keating Relations is my small company because it's all about relations. And if you look there, you will find me.
Excellent, excellent. So anyway, you were so enamored with the U.S. Air Force that you signed up for another term with them.
I did. I signed up for another 5 years because they moved me then to Germany.
Right.
And I stayed there nearly 5, 6 years before I went back to the last year in the United States. And during my time in Germany, which of course is another cultural experience, being in Europe, I got there in 1988 before the wall came down and stayed there till 93. So it was also an exciting time to be in Germany, and learning new language, learning new culture, learning new ways of doing things.
Well, that's certainly impressive. You're hardly in Germany a year and they're taking down a wall that had been up for nearly 30 years. So you made some impact there.
Thank you very much. I wish I could say I was involved with that, but maybe the time thereafter I got involved because I did lots of community activities in Germany, getting to know the Germans, and I got to know quite a few actually East Germans who had moved, of course, when the wall came down. And for them, of course, it was also an absolute new experience to come to a society based on Western morals,
Mm.
fantastic time to actually be there in the country. Yeah, I learned a lot about cultural dimensions and seeing people really just as people. We are just humans.
Yeah.
I have this story which I tell people when you get asked, where are you from, and I tell
Yes.
them, yeah, planet Earth. How about you? Because really, does it make a difference where you're from? We're all human, and this is the essence of trying to make a connection with somebody else. We shouldn't be putting people into how would you say it, into drawers, pigeonholes and drawers, because we are just human.
Yes, and I suppose when you scrape back and people end up having a chat in a garden over a beer, no matter what part of the planet you're on, unless they're non-drinkers or something, everybody
Yeah,
seems to just chill out and be happy.
exactly. And look, when you're ever trying to create a relationship, whether it's in business or personal, it's about that connection. It's about really finding something where you relate to somebody. Yeah. And if you put people into pigeonholes, that starts off let's say the conversation wrong. Forget those pigeonholes. Try to avoid those biases, which we all have. We're all
Yes, of
human.
course. Yes.
And I do quite a lot of research with people on biases and make them aware, because if you're aware of them, then you can avoid them. Yeah. And you can really get to actually just see the person as a person. And if you have that kind of mindset, then it's about growing the relationship, because you're not putting any sort of barriers between you. even starting a relationship. So this is very important in human relation dimensions today. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose a question that just came to mind there, just to throw one from the side in at you. The question, I suppose, would be, is media contributing more to breaking down barriers or building them up in terms of people and how they react to one another?
Yeah, social media, it has its good things and it has its bad things. Unfortunately, the algorithms, if you're looking at certain material which is sort of biased because you look at things in a certain way, well, the algorithm will give you more of what you've been looking at. So it will confirm your bias.
Right.
So, if you're a left wing sort of thinking person, ideology, you will get more, let's say information which confirms that
And
sort
just
of way of thinking.
reinforces what you already believe.
Exactly. So you have to be quite, aware of that when you're using social media, that that's going to happen because that's how the algorithm is created. So I say a comfortable relationship with social media is also something which I challenge people on who I coach today. In fact, thinking about where we are right now, I mean, we're in COVID. We're
Yes.
all very, very sort of worried about washing hands and keeping hygiene and having social distancing. I would challenge people to have social media distancing every day, you know?
So say all of us from my side, what I believe in. Yes.
And it is, we really need to take a moment of time away from social media. Clearly, first thing in the morning, I would
Mm.
challenge people to have at least 1 hour without social media and 1 hour before you go to bed,
Yeah.
because it is intensive, and it clutters your mind, and if you're thinking about creating a good platform for good relationships in people, that dimension of connection or even output of what you do in a daily day, um, social media can clutter your mind. So think about that when you're using it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very, very good tip. I was sort of fascinated that A, from Ireland off to the States, then off to
Hmm.
Korea, then to
Yes.
Germany, but you weren't
Yes.
finished there. You weren't finished there.
No, 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 no. So I mean, even during my time in Germany, the Air Force sent me to different locations. I became kind of a mini HR person. I was in
Right.
Morocco for a couple of months, and Turkey, and Spain, and Brussels. So, culturally, I was learning, different worlds. And that is just, for me, the most exciting part about my experience then. I was so curious anyway to get to know many different people and where they come from and who they are and how they tick.
Mm.
So for me, that was learning. I was getting that learning apart from putting myself through college for 5 years and getting my business degree. And then, so when I finished the Air Force, I was actually based in the United States, but I had met a German lady in my time in Germany, and I ended up coming back to Germany
Yeah.
and making my career here.
Just before we move on to the career, I'd just get a perspective from somebody who from Ireland, but
Yeah,
was traveling under the sort of flag of the US. How did you
yeah.
find people's reaction? I mean, being in so many different countries, how did you find people reacted to that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there is stereotyping, and people will pigeonhole you, unfortunately. But my approach to it was, I'm more of a global citizen. I have this Irish background, so I'm
Sure.
I'm sort of not really American. Yeah, I have this badge because I had the opportunity to use the badge, if I want to say it like that. But
Yes.
for me, it was like, trying to meet people as a global citizen, and say, this is me, this is Michael. Yeah, I'm human. How are you too? Yeah. But most times you will get relative stereotyping, but people are people. Once they actually understand who you are and what you stand for, and if your values are pure and, yeah, have integrity, I would say,
Sure.
then they forget about the badge.
Yeah. No, I think that's very valuable to say that, and people need to just remember that when they're sort of
Yeah.
integrating
And,
themselves with
and to
other
be, as I
cultures.
said previously, to be aware of that bias, because we have that. We automatically pigeonhole people, which is not good, but it is how it is.
That's we're human. Okay, so you've been lured back to Germany, and you've
Yes.
been there now for many, many years. Uh,
Yes, indeed.
Certainly a different culture and way of doing things, business-wise,
Yes.
and that must have been a bit fun for an Irish person.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in terms of directness, the Germans are quite direct. The experience, one of my forming experiences when I got here initially was, people, you go into a bar and somebody would say to you, "Would you like a drink?"
Mm.
And you would say, "No, I'm okay at the moment." And of course, in Ireland, that would mean the person would say, "Go on." In Germany, it means tough luck. You're not getting another drink because they would have understood, no, you don't want to drink. So,
Yeah.
you need to get aware of this kind of way of being and way of doing business. Quite direct, which is nice,
Mm.
which can be a bit sort of for Irish people and actually, oh my God, he's quite rude, maybe, he's
Yeah.
quite direct, but it is just the way they do it, and there's no messing around. It's yes or no, and let's go. Yeah. So it's efficient, and of course the Germans are very efficient in terms of processes. They don't maybe take the time to be more focused on the people relationship, which is
Sure.
where I challenge them. The nice kind of soft way of having a little chat, as we would say in Ireland, and getting to know people. But I would say the mix that I've learned of being more personable in terms of the human dimension, but also having this directness, yeah,
Mm.
has stood to me in the years of business here.
All right. Just a question again, talking about cultures, we see so much sort of based on our knowledge here, but
Mm,
we're seeing the lines being blurred between the working day and the family day. Is that
yes.
happening equally as much in Germany, or are they a bit more disciplined around it?
No, absolutely. This is a challenge for anybody. If you've had a normal sort of rhythmus to your day, which was about getting up, going with some form of transport to your workplace, and then actually then experiencing your workplace, and then coming home and doing all that, that is all gone. Yeah, it's all about this home office,
Hmm.
and it's very, very blurred for people. So, in fact, I tell people, and yeah, coach people on this idea of really focusing on building this structure in your day, that there is a difference between home and work. Yeah. Even if it is stupidly to go outside your door, walk around your building and go in the other door and go into your office. Even
Right.
doing that 5-minute walk or 10-minute walk, yeah, to sort of change your mindset is also very helpful, because we are blurring, these kind of idea of boundaries between home and work, being in a home office. Yeah. And it's still going to be a challenge for people who have particularly small children. Yeah. With
Hmm.
homeschooling. I mean, I can see clearly, it is a big issue in Ireland. It is here also for families to coordinate all that. Yeah. And it's, learning by doing. We all don't have the answers. We're doing this together. We're learning. Um,
If I just go back just before COVID, and then I'll come back into it again, because I think what you're
yeah.
talking about is very important. Just before COVID, when people
Yeah.
were going to their office and then home,
Yeah.
what we have found is that people with smart devices find themselves working till all hours, when in
Yeah.
fact there's been an aspiration for a 4-day working week. So we seem to be
Yeah.
working counter to it. Did you see
Yeah.
the same experience in Germany with people working there?
Yes. Now, I would say the one benefit maybe in Germany is, of course, there's a large, how do you saw it, movement of the labor force. Okay, so there's
Right.
labor unions who look at protecting of the employee rights,
Right.
and always there's been this idea there should be a certain limit to your day, so
Yes.
legally in Germany, and that's also European law, but wouldn't be practiced as much in other countries. But in Germany, it's more, it's the rule, we live it. Okay, so a 10-hour day is the limit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where
Right.
normally people would work maybe 7-8 hours. Now, of course, the flexibility that employees need to have as knowledge workers, of course, is also a challenge, right? But quite a few, let's say, labor unions and companies have said, look, we want to also maybe force people to only have a 10-hour day, to
Yes.
be offline for a period of time. So they would actually switch their capability off to be online on their mobile phones. Some big companies have done that here, to kind of set a signal that it is important to have this boundary between your day and your work day. And because, of course, we have this idea of social media, or let's say a telephone, which can be totally always online, then we're always online. And that's not
Yes.
healthy either. There's lots of studies being done that it is not the best for your human beingness, if I call it like that,
Yeah.
to be totally online. And German companies have realized this and now have encouraged their employees to actually be offline, not
Sure.
to have to dedicate them to answer those emails in the evening time. No, this is part of living. We need to have this time where we have a balance for ourselves. I call it me being me time,
Yes.
or we being me time, time for the family and not just working.
Yeah, because it's quite interesting what social media and also in terms of smart devices communications has done. I go back to our days, if you think, Michael, in the sense of you went into the office, your communications tool was a phone that was tied to a desk. And when you
Yeah.
pulled the door behind you as you left the office, you left that phone there as well.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is a challenge today because, we had maybe the benefit of being analog and
Mm.
having the ability to, move ourselves away, from these tools of communication. But everybody now has a smartphone. It's with
Yeah.
them, 24/7 nearly. And I would challenge people to put their phone away. Like I said to you, social media distancing. Don't have it in your bedroom. That's a rule I never would have. Never have a mobile phone in your bedroom. Put it away.
Mm.
First thing you wake up in the morning, you should not have your mobile phone with you. Yeah. You should feel the moment of waking up. Yeah. And, being your own
Connecting with the
person.
world.
Exactly. Spend the first few minutes really being your own human being, have that moment. There's so many, people complaining about not having time. Oh, I don't have time for this and I don't have time for that. There's no argument today. Yeah. You can spend a moment, for yourself. You can spend a moment actually for moving your body, and actually spend 10-15 minutes just doing something to keep your body in motion. Yeah, I would
Sure.
say. You can do something to meditate, you can do a moment of breathing.
Mm.
There's no excuse today, but people will find an excuse if they want an excuse, as I say.
Well, it's strangely that people have the discipline to look at their phone every few minutes, but don't have the discipline to take a moment out at the beginning and end of each day.
Exactly. And these are about what I would call mini habits or rituals.
Right.
And it might sound like, oh gosh, I have to get into a ritual, but it's all about behavior and creating a sustainable behavior. I mean, what is more important than your own self and your own health? I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything more important. So, people say, well, I don't have time for that. But that's stupid. I mean, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to make sure you're sustainable in your own being and your own self, in terms of good health, yeah, good physical health and mental health, spend those few moments every day being your own self. Yeah. Having the time for just being me, as I say, or just moving for a moment, or just connecting with another human being for a moment. Yeah. Instead of using that phone and looking at social media and spending time of your day on this machine. A machine should never replace, human beings.
Well, I was going to ask you for a message to finish up on, but I think you've just done it perfectly in that one there. Can I say, wow.